Hello, this is photowalkthrough.com, Tutorial 6, Chapter 3. Now, as I mentioned last week, I'm on holiday at the moment, so this show's pre-recorded. I hope I'm releasing it on Monday the 29th of May, but my apologies if not, and I'm also sorry if I've not responded to your emails or posts on the Flickr group. I can tell you now, though, that I'm actually away cruising on the QE2. This is a very special occasion since it's my mother-in-law's 65th birthday, and this was a surprise trip for her. We're visiting Bilbao, La Rochelle and St. Peter Port, so hopefully I'll come back with some decent photos to show you. If you're interested, then keep an eye on the Photo Walkthrough Flickr group or on my Flickr photo stream. Also last week I forgot to mention that we've sailed comfortably past the 500 viewers mark. My best estimate at the moment is that we have somewhere between 600 and 700 viewers subscribing to the feed and something like 200 more people that watch the videos through the website. I can't tell you how exciting that is. I really appreciate your attention, and I want to make the show even better and try to get some of you folks talking to each other and learning from each other. Remember, I'd like to cover viewer submitted images and questions, so please mail me at photowalkthrough@gmail.com if you've got a Photoshop or photography related question. Right, let's get on with the image. Remember that this tutorial is intended to recap the ground that I covered in tutorial 1, which was produced as flash videos in fairly poor quality. It's still available on the photowalkthrough.com website. Just click on the video tutorials link at the top of the webpage, or just watch this video. Hopefully that will cover the same ground. So what he's doing to this image? Well, let's just go back and see how we left it. That's how we left it last week. First of all, I think probably the blown out sky. That's the most obvious part of this. So pressing tab to bring back my tools and zoom out so that we can see the image. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a hard light darkening layer. This is basically a dodge burn layer, which is designed to either fairly drastically dodge or burn some of the areas on the image. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new layer. This is just a regular layer, using the sticky note button here at the bottom of the layers palette. So if I click that, we get a new layer, which I'm going to call hard light, and I'm going to set the blending mode of that layer to hard light as well. Now I'm going to grab a brush. I'm hitting B to grab a brush, and then I'm going to hit D to get black and white, which I've already got, and then I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm using the square bracket keys on my keyboard to make the brush larger or smaller. If I just drag the brushes palette in, this is basic keyboard shortcuts that are just some of the most useful in the program. So you can see here, this is the brush size slider. Square bracket keys make that slider move, and if I press the shift square bracket keys, watch this preview down here. If I press shift square bracket the right hand square bracket, it gives me a harder edge, and the left hand square bracket gives me a softer edge, and I usually use it with a fully soft edge brush, and I usually use the brush around about the size of the thing I want to edit. So in this case I'm going to be working on that bright patch of the sky there, so I'm going to set my brush to about that size. Another thing that's useful, if you've got a Wacom tablet, by default your pen pressure will control the shape of the brush, which will mean that as you this preview here shows you a small brush at that end, large brush in the middle, small brush at that end, and that's intended to reflect how hard you're pressing. So a light pressure will give you a small brush, a hard pressure will give you a large brush. I actually turn that off, and instead I go into other dynamics. This is all in the brushes palette, and I set the opacity to be controlled by pen pressure instead of the size. I think that's a much more useful way of using the pen. So just drag that back out, and that means that when I press hard I get a darker pen stroke, and when I press lightly I get a lighter pen stroke. So again, I'm with my brush, just pressing D to get black and white. It's regular keystroke. I so often press B and then D to get the brush and black and white that it's just force of habit there, even though it was already black and white. So I've got my hard light layer. It's set to hard light blending mode, and what I'm going to do is just pressing very lightly with the pen on the Wacom. I'm just going to run a couple of strokes over that darker area. Now, one of the things to watch out for is that the edges of the brush, which are going to be lighter because it's a big soft edge brush, don't hopefully leave too much in the way of obvious halos around the edge of the edit. So be careful to blend the darkening in. What I'm trying to do here is just darken down that overbright section of the sky here. This is a lot easier with a Wacom than it is with a mouse, but if you're going to use a mouse, what I suggest instead, you can see my brush opacity here is 100%. That's because I'm used to using the graphics tablet. If you drag that opacity down to 30%, for example, I'll do just a couple of these strokes with a mouse just to show you how I would do this with a mouse. Still the same square bracket keys to make things larger and smaller. And what you would do with a mouse, okay, 30% is too much. Let me drag that. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. Drag the opacity down to 10%. That's better. This hard light layer is really difficult to work with because it's very, very strong edit. Normally when I'm dodging and burning I use a soft light layer, but the hard light layer is necessary because the soft light layer wouldn't sufficiently affect this blown out section. The blown out section is completely white, so I definitely want a hard light layer to grey it down a little bit and just bring it all back within the right levels of darkness. So with a mouse, I would just leave it on 10% and I would do lots of strokes just to get the same effect. And you can see that's still quite a strong edit with the mouse there. I'm going to just undo this because I've fairly badly overdone that with the mouse there. Much easier to do these sort of edits with the graphics tablet. You just press gently as you draw. So, something worth mentioning, by the way, I have been in contact with. Just going back to the pen, so I'll drag that opacity back up to 100. I have been in contact with Wacom. I'm trying to set up a competition for you guys. I'm not quite sure what it will be yet. Probably some sort of submit an image and we'll pick the best one type competition. But in particular, I'm trying to get somebody to donate a Wacom graphics tablet as a prize. Since I keep wittering on about how good they are, it seems like the perfect prize. So if anybody knows anyone who wants to donate a Wacom graphics tablet as a prize for a competition, I would love to hear from you. Wacom at the moment are saying that they've used up their allocation, but they will consider it later in the year. That's great. I appreciate them giving me their time. If anybody wants to donate one in the meantime, I can always run the competition again. So trying to just work on a few little interactive things for you guys to get involved, competitions and such like. So there we go. Just burning in a little bit. Every now and then, if I overdo it, I'm just pressing X to switch back. The X key switches between the foreground and background colour. So if I do an edit that's perhaps a little too strong like that, use the white to paint over it. That undoes the change a little bit. Needs to be a little bit careful with that, but it's basically experience will guide you through that. So we've darkened up our sky bit there. That's just taken a bit of the edge off the blown out area there. Just turn that on and off. You can see actually that's quite a large edit. Now the other thing I've been working on here is this image is all about the sky and the ground, and there's this strip of land in the middle here that is looking just a little bit grey at the moment, so I'm just going to just darkening that up a little bit. Now you can see I've overshot the edge of this as I've done it because I was using a bit of a big brush. So zooming in on that edge, I'm going to press the E key to get me the eraser tool and use a slightly smaller brush. This is all with a big fuzzy edge brush. I'm just going to just run the eraser along the edge of that just to undo the edit outside of the ground. So hopefully that, a little bit too much. Hopefully that will take off any halos that I may have introduced there. You can see I'm just painting above the ground. I'm not painting in the ground because I want the darkening to still take effect on the actual island thing there. Okay, that's pretty good. Now the other thing I want to do here with this hard light layer is I just want to put a little bit more light on the ground. So back to my brush, I press B to go back to my brush, X to get my black and white the right way around. I'm painting with white now, And I'm just going to just layer a little bit of light on the ground here. What I really want is the impression that this sunlight, you can see there are these God rays, crepuscular rays, coming through the clouds here, and there is actually naturally on this image some nice sheen of the sunlight off the water there. I'd like that to sort of carry through into the foreground of the image. So I'm just making sort of a light patch in the foreground here. That's probably a little bit much. Let me grab my eraser again and just a couple of strokes of the eraser gently across that just to dim that down. And if you're not sure whether or not you've completely undone the edit, just turn the layer on and off and you can see that I've really not undone the edit completely. There's still quite a lot more lightness put on the ground there. Back to my brush, just a little bit more lightness there, just to even it up so that the light is coming through the centre of the image. I want the light to appear to sort of flow through the centre there. And obviously these sand dunes are intended to frame the image. This is an example of trying to find, there's a background with the sky and the island, a middle ground with the boats, and a foreground with the sand dunes and the way this water sort of runs through the centre of the image, hopefully causing a bit of a leading line there. That was the plan. As I say, I wasn't desperately happy with the original image. The exposure's all wrong, the white balance is all wrong. But actually, I think the composition was reasonably good. So I'm glad I came back to work on this one. So that's probably everything I want to do just for now on that hard light layer. This is just the purpose of this hard light layer was simply because it was a badly exposed image. The sky was blown out. The ground was really gloomy, and it needed a fairly heavy hammer to hit this image and get it back to something that looked usable. So having hit it with a heavy hammer and got the tones sort of back in the right sort of levels, the next step is I'm going to do a soft light layer, which is a regular dodge and burn layer. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to make another new layer, which is that button there on the layers palette, and I'm going to name it soft light, and I'm going to set my blending mode to soft light. And it's exactly the same technique again as with the hard light layer. I'm going to grab a brush, I'm going to choose black and white, and in this case I'll probably start with black. Black will burn, and remember, burning in old photographic terminology would mean exposing the paper longer, I believe. I've never done print photography, so forgive me if I make any mistakes with references to print photography. My experience is all digital, but as I understand it, dodging is about waving things in front of the exposure lamp in front of the paper, and burning is about adding more light on certain parts of the image, and that will tend to make things darker and burn in. So burning is making things darker, dodging is making things lighter. So painting with black in this case will burn, which is a very useful way of putting more drama into this sky. There is quite a lot of nice detail in this sky, and your job as the photographer post-processing it is to choose which of that leads your viewer's eye in the direction you want it to go. So all I'm doing is I'm picking in particular, these rays here are what interested me in this image. When I was shooting it, I saw rays pointing at the boat, so I am going to pick detail that encourages the viewer to see those lines. Now also there are some nice horizontal lines in this sky, which certainly I will bring out. But if you watch what I'm doing, I'm just where there's a bit of black in the sky, where there's an edge, I'm just going to paint gently with black over it and encourage that edge to sort of show up. And where there's a dark line, that was a little bit much, where there's a dark line between the rays, I'm just going to run my brush through those areas just to encourage that line to be visible. So you can see I'm just starting to bring out those rays there. This top left corner of the image here, probably a little bit too much light compared to the other parts of the image, so I'm actually going to press a little bit harder there and just paint some actual fairly dark black onto the soft light layer here, just to darken it up a little bit more and hopefully lead the eye, because obviously the action here, Another good compositional technique is to put your main subjects on the thirds lines, a rule of thirds. I'm sure you'll have heard of it. The crepuscular rays are a third of the way down the image and two-thirds of the way across the image, and the boats are two-thirds of the way down the image and sort of centered roughly two-thirds of the way across the image. So these 2 points here are where I'm hoping your eye will gravitate. So I'm going to just try and encourage your eye over there by making that sort of the lighter area. So I'm going to grab a bit of white and just lighten up there, make it look like the sun's behind that cloud, which it is. Just paint a bit more darkness around the edges, and do a little bit more work picking out these rays. Mostly working with black at the moment, but I'm going to just now switch to white and just fake up those rays a little bit more. So that's good. That's good. I'm also going to put. Remember, I want the light to look like it's coming through the centre of this image, so I'm going to put a little bit of light on the sides of these sand dunes as though the sun is lighting them. I'm going to put a little bit of dark there. So we're actually changing the direction of the light a little bit here. Not an entirely honest edit, but one that I think helps with the composition. And I'm going to just paint a little black on the water there, just to try and pick out some detail on the water. What else needs doing? Let me just turn that layer on and off and show you what we've got so far. First of all, look at the rays. Let's look at what I've done with the rays. The rays are there when I turn the layer off, but all I've done is just where there were lines already. You can see I've lightened the rays a little bit, and between the lines I've painted a little bit of black just to encourage those lines to be more visible. I've just seen something else. I just want to burn down that little bit of ground a little bit. It was looking a little over bright. Also, let's just turn this on and off and look at the sand piles a little bit. That's without the edit, and if I turn it back on, you can see I've just painted a little bit of light in on the side of the sands, just to make it look like the light's coming through the middle there. That's I'm seeing a little bit of haloing there, just correcting that. So that's what we've done so far. We've also painted a little bit of drama in the sky, in the clouds here. There's more to come with that sky. There's definitely more work to do on that, but you can see what we've done so far. The other thing I want to do, because the boats here are actually one of our main subjects, so I want to just a couple of these boats could use a little bit of lightening up. We're going to grab the white and paint a little bit of light in some of the darker areas of some of these boats. Just a little bit of black at the bottom there, just to encourage some detail. They are very grey. We're going to increase the contrast in this image in a coming video. Everything on this image at the moment is very grey, but just trying to manually increase some contrast here, because you can see the white parts of that boat's very grey. It's very flat and muddy, which is how the original image looked, and we need to just give ourselves more to work with when we come to increase the contrast. Just by the way, you see me do this a lot. All I'm doing here, if you press and hold down the spacebar, you get this hand icon, and then you can click and drag to move the image around. I do that completely without thinking, and it's not something everybody knows about, so just thought I'd mention it there. One of the most useful keystrokes in one of the many very useful keystrokes in Photoshop. And you get used to sitting with your hand with one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse. And usually, in my case, I've got one hand on the spacebar, and occasionally I pop my finger up to press the X key to switch between black and white, and then back to the spacebar. It's an interesting detail in the image here. Look, there's this lovely darker nearer ground island, and then a much more faded out island in the back, a bit of land in the background. I just love that sort of two-dimensional effect you get with when you've got things in a hazy background. You get this sort of two-dimensional nearer and this two-dimensional lighter, farther detail. Just gonna seeing these clouds here that could use a little bit more drama, and I'm just going to try and pick out the front of that ground there. It's all about finding the details that interest you and just trying to draw the viewer's eye to them a little bit as well. Or at least that's my technique anyway. So I've got a fairly distinct line between this nearer island and that farther island. And just painting a little black on those clouds just to bring a little bit more of that detail in. Trying not to spoil my rays. I've still got these crepuscular rays over the top, so I don't want to wreck those. Let's see how I did. One of the problems with working it zoomed in like that is that sometimes you can't see very well what it's doing to the overall image, and I see now that in working on those clouds there, I have stopped that ray there halfway down the sky, which doesn't look realistic. So just painting a little bit of white in just to bring that back. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to call it a day there. I'll be back next Monday with the next steps in this image and hopefully a tan. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks a lot.